faced this challenge in moving to the country. We want to move to the country, we want to leave the city, but the biggest challenge in general we face is we don't know how to sustain ourselves in the country. Is that right? How many of you faced that challenge in this process? Faced it before, now, or you see it as a challenge in the future? There are some hands. So in this workshop, I would like us to go a bit deeper into that and have a conversation about how we can give or do something more than we think can be done moving to the country. So in order to move to the country, we think many times, as I said, how to make that to be also an income, and not just trying to have ways, going to town, have another job or something in order to have a ministry into the country. So how we can have a missional business in the country living. So the first thing I want to ask Rob is, many times moving to the country, we go there with our talents and ideas about product. How we can go further than that and not just sell a product, but actually being able to focus on the real problem and solution we want to give to the people.
So I think the answer to start off with that is, what's the motivation? Like, what's the reason that we're moving to the country? And I think we can, when we answer that, I think the next pieces fall in line. I'm not sure how much I should do in slides. I have too many slides for everything, so I'm debating how much I do in slides and how much we just talk. But
I think we can go with slides too.
Okay. I think if we were to, maybe we just start real quickly then of the importance of ministry through business. And we'd see that, we're told very clearly we're not to allow anything to interfere in our duty. It says, instead of giving precious hours to pleasure and money making, we should be devoting it to the word truth. I think it's just a framework to start thinking about, we have no time for worldly enterprises. And a lot of times we're thinking, at least the mentees that kind of come through sometimes they come through and they say, I want to make a bunch of money, teach me how to be rich so I can make a bunch of money, right? And I'm going to use it for God, I promise. And I'm saying, okay, well, one is you shouldn't be thinking, how do I go in the world to make money to come back and give it to God? And two is that, we don't have, even time for worldly enterprises. That means even the type of businesses that we say we want to run, we may not have time for those. And just two quotes. One is that Ellen White tells us very clearly that God has joined business and religion together. She says religion and business are not two separate things, but one. And so there shouldn't be a mindset of, especially if you're starting off saying, I want to create a new business, there shouldn't be a mindset of, let me go, create this and then volunteer my time on the weekend, or I'll pay double tithe, or whatever it is. We should be thinking, how do I create a missional enterprise where mission is baked into the core of the enterprise? And so this goes back to ultimately what our mindset is, and thinking through, why do we want a business? And is it to supply for our financial needs, or is it to open up opportunities for evangelism? So I think that's kind of an interesting thing. And a lot of us immediately say, well, because I have to supply for my financial needs. But we're given a lot of quotes that God takes care of the lilies, right? God takes care of the birds. Do we really need to even do a business for ourselves? Now, this is a radical thinking shift, right? Because yes, of course you do, Rob. But I'm experimenting in ideas that you don't. I'm experimenting in ideas that we actually don't have to worry about self, and we just focus all in on evangelism. It's a different shift, but Ellen White does say, if we were to think about that, she says, invent some way of becoming acquainted with people. Businesses are a great way to becoming acquainted with people, but to have a real missional business, you're going to be thinking about, what are my customer touch points? what are the different interaction points that I would have with my customer? So I know that didn't answer the question yet. That was maybe more of a setup to getting into the question that Christy asked, which is like, what is our motivation to start a business? And I think when we look at that, I've identified 3 different ways. Now, granted, this is kind of an adaptation of what I used to teach in Silicon Valley, but there's kind of 3 different ways that you look at ideating a business. And one is based on passion, and most of us start a business because we're super passionate about something. And it's like, I love tofu, I want to create a tofu company, whatever it is. I love, this certain thing, and so I want to create a business around it because I want others to experience the same thing that I have. And this can be, really good for you because you'll stick with it when times are bad. But this can also have a threat, right? The threat on that is, is it actually aligned with other people's needs? And so I just want to say, like, if we're in the country and we're thinking, how do I create a business to sustain myself here in the country? Or better yet, how do I create an opportunity, some touch points to bring people in, to be in contact with others in order to share the gospel? I would just caution us on getting too excited about our business, which, sounds like a good thing. You should be excited about your business, and you should, but don't move forward without rational thought on, is there any demand? And I think that's the next reason. The next reason people create ideate a business is on demand. This idea of how do I see the market need, and then how do I respond to market need? And this is like, capitalism 101 essentially. But in the upside typically is there's a lot of money to be made if you spot a problem that you can solve. The downside is if you're not passionate about it. And so I question anyone that says, I want to create a business, but I'm not really passionate about this business. Will you stick with it when times are tough? We know that most businesses don't make money the first 6 months, sometimes the first couple of years, especially if you're reinvesting into the business. So are you willing to do this for free? Which goes back to the whole idea of like, if you're doing a missional business, yeah, you'll do a missional business for free because that's your way of meeting people. And so it almost starts to paint this picture like when we start seeing how we ideate businesses from a worldly perspective, there's a lot of risk. But if we change the perspective and say, how do we ideate a business based on God's principles of just servitude, the first couple of years of a business that are typically really rough and where you typically fail, you're not going to worry about. You're going to get through that just fine because you're there for a different reason. I think the third aspect of ideation is through empathy. And this is the idea that I'm not starting with a need, I'm starting with an audience. It's a little bit nuanced. But the idea is maybe you just want to do something to help somebody, not because they want it, but because they need it. And there's a difference between want and need. The opportunities that you can actually make a real impact in the world. But the question is it actually sustainable? Although a lot of needs that we have, a lot of businesses that are formed around empathy are actually ministries that don't have a direct business model associated to it. And so now it feels like now we have to get into other revenue streams. And so this is kind of just this idea, but I think if we start to just think of these not as 3 different pieces, and we think about these as 3 pieces in the same journey, I think you'll be able to ideate a business from the country that is stronger. And so the idea simply is maybe we start with passion. God really put in my heart this, and then we move into a reality check. Is there a demand for that? And then we move into actually talking to the customers. Is there, what does the customer need? Really fleshing out a better understanding of what the offering is going to be based on your audience. And then actually work backwards from that afterwards. So you start linear and then you work backwards, and then you it's this idea of you're going into like, how do I best fulfill the demand? And then how do I ultimately generate demand for the passion that I have? So I don't know, that's the thought. If you can find something, in the 3 of those, I think you'll be in a good space.
Good. Let's say I'm thinking about myself some years ago when I came from US with all the knowledge and the wish and the desire to bring all this to Romania. Some of the informations also about organic ideas. So when I started, I was very much like, you know, parents, friends, relatives, people around who tell me, you know, organic, it's not possible. So my first wish, without even realizing too much, was just to prove that it's possible to do organic gardening and have, you know, great and tasty vegetables. So I did that. And from that point, without realizing, I started focusing very much on me. You know, it's like what I can do, my ideas, everything is gonna work and whatever. So there are two things I would like us to approach in this conversation, in this workshop. One is we have the fear of not moving to the country because we'll not make money there. So we had a bit of conversation. Rob was also my mentor in few things, and I would like you to approach the idea, okay, if there's a fear of a challenge of somebody to move to the country because there's no something I can do to sustain myself, I would like us to move the how you call it, the light, you know, from myself to people, because actually I'm going there to serve. So help us to understand a bit how to change the focus from us and our talents and what we can do to the people, and actually, you know, how we can find ways to serve people and make that a business. So don't go to the country with the idea of, you know, my talents can't serve there, or the products I'm thinking are not going to be useful, but let's take and focus on people and, yeah, help us a bit with the idea, I want to move to the country, there is nothing I can do.
So I think the first thing is understanding, we always talk about understanding the assets, like what's in your hand, understanding the opportunities. If you go there and you maybe, I don't have slides of this, we didn't plan this one out, but if we go there with a thought of what is the opportunity to serve? Analyze the area, analyze the market, talk to some people, and just start asking, you know, what are the challenges here, right? A good entrepreneur, by the way, is not a great business person. A good entrepreneur is somebody that understands how to identify problems and then how to find a solution to the problem, right? Like, you don't have to be shrewd and all these other things. Like, you've got to just, if you solve problems, you're a great entrepreneur. And then as you're able to get a little market fit, you can hire the people that have, you know, the fancy degrees later on if you want to. But you got to focus on solving problems. So maybe you go there first, look around. What's here? What's the pattern? What are the type of people here? Why do people come here? Is it a touristy zone? You know, what's the, you know, is it, you know, completely secluded in nature? Like what are you working with? What's the environment? I think from there, look at, spot the anti-pattern, spot what's not there. What is missing from this that maybe people would want to have? You know, is there a need for a training center here, a school, you know, a sanitarium here, you know, publishing house, whatever it would be? What's the land suited for? And I think that's the other piece is when you start seeing that different land is actually suited for different things, it's almost like God is trying to tell you what he wants to do there based on just the topography, based on, you know, the geographical location to sit, other things. I think the next step on that is once you start understanding what the needs potentially are, thinking through what the opportunities are. You know, one of the things just to kind of point out is that we typically have this idea that we have to be in the business in the city because that's where the people are, and that's true. That's why people, you know, put expensive storefronts on streets that a lot of people walk on. But you can also create destinations. And I think that's something that we should learn as people wanting to live in the country is how do we start creating destinations? Because there are people in cities that don't want to be in the cities, right? There are people in the cities that say, I would love to just go experience the countryside. So if you have beautiful countryside, form it in a way that people can come out to you and make a destination out of it. And I think that's maybe the biggest takeaway from this question, I think, would just be, how do we form a destination? how do we become a peculiar people? There's this chapter we were reading in Acts of the Apostles about, I think it's chapter 13 or something. It's the one about Athens, I think. And how people were interested in Paul because he was strange and new. It's, I think, maybe a slight paraphrase, but that's essentially what he said. How do we become strange and different? How do we become a peculiar people and shine as peculiar people? And have it where people want to come visit us, even if they have to travel for an hour to come visit us, and make it so interesting. And so we already know we know what we want. And I don't want to go on a too huge tangent because I know you got great questions. When we start thinking about what's the difference between want and need, it's a matter of control. Most marketers think about what can I market them to want? Because need is hard to control. If we can go back to, we know how God created us. We know the needs, their internal needs. So could we just think about how to, exploit the needs, so to speak, in a nice way? People want to be around greenery. They want to be around sounds of nature. They want to have detoxing experiences. Maybe that's our opportunity, is to embrace. The last lesson in this, and I'll kick it back, is I always tell the guys, take your greatest weakness and make it your greatest strength. So just always be thinking about, what's my weakness? My weakness is, I'm an hour outside of any city. There's nobody out here. Great. That's your strength. You're an hour outside of the city and no one is out there. Right? We got to change our mindset.
Yeah, I've experienced some of these things, and I realized, at some point I had the fear to move to the country because what I can do there. And many times I limited my mind that the only thing I can do is, sell vegetables or sell seedlings. But when I started to learn more and understand, it's not about putting myself there in front of the people, what great things I can do. It's focusing on their needs and how, and as you already mentioned, is to be the leading point to something. I realize, there are many opportunities that we into the country, explore all of those. Also, how we can change the perspective on, and make that experience to people. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on
Yeah,
on
I
that?
think I have some slides on that. No. So this is, I do have some slides on this one here. I think there's a lot of times about, so you said vegetables. Mm-hmm. So there's this thought, okay, I'm going to go to the country and I'm going to vegetables to who? My neighbors. What's the demand? Right? Because there's a lot of supply. A lot of your neighbors are probably in the country are probably also creating vegetables. So you're not going to make a lot of money. You may cover the cost of the seeds and, so how do you actually start demonstrating more value or even changing your category, changing your class? Mm-hmm. And what I mean by this is this. When we think about any problem, we understand that there is a current state. The current state of the problem is, I have a problem, right? And I want a solution to that problem. So in this instance, I'll try to think of something for vegetables. I have
Not
a need.
Not necessary. We can take anything from.
I like challenges.
Okay.
All right. I have a need for my body is telling me that the produce I'm getting out of the city, out of the supermarket, isn't fulfilling my needs. Mm-hmm. I want to have produce from, something that makes me feel healthier. So ultimately, I want to feel better. If we look at that, then the resultant state is, in this instance, I want to resolve the need that I have. And so that's what we typically look at. The jump is always there. There's somebody that says, I have a need. Entrepreneur comes in and says, let me find a bridge, right, to the resolved state. And that's what a brand is. Now, a brand, as we understand, there's different types of brands. Now brand, if you're not familiar with that, it's like how would you put a face on a corporate identity, right? It's like a face on a product, is an offering, it's a service. It really comes down to a brand is your reputation. And so when we think about what our offering is, what it is that we're offering, we should be thinking about how do we make our offering a puzzle piece that becomes that little bridge between the current state and the resolved state. Now, this is basic stuff, right? So we get that. When we start looking at it, though, analyzing it a little differently, this mindset having this mindset of, I want to be just the bridge between their current state and the resolved state, is going to be putting you into as a commodity. I'll explain. Imagine we assign numbers to each stage. Stage 1 is status quo. I'm full, okay? Then I get hungry and I'm like, I'm hungry, but I want something that makes me feel real, alive, right? We went to this raw cafe in Florence. I drug him there, I don't think, yeah. And I was like, man, this is it. Like, cause I felt like, I was excited about the food there, right? That was this idea. My body told me I want something more than what we're going to find in the streets. Mm-hmm. So they were offering something more. But the idea is that I ate and then I was full again. So I'm at a 0, right? In the sense that, like, even in the bigger picture, if you're negative, if you're a 0, right? Then you're a -1 because I have a need. If you fulfill the need, you bring me back to a 0. Does that concept make sense? And the numbers are weird, right? So if you're taking a customer and you're leaving them at the state that they were before they came to you, before they had the problem, like, you're a commodity brand. And they may come back, but that's not how you build a brand. And so what I recommend is a little bit weird, but not weird, but it's how do I leave them at a +1? And if we think about this, especially in country living brands, you don't have to be the cheapest on the market. What you want to do is figure out, how do I transform, right? How do I leave them at an elevated state, not leave them at a 0? Like, it seems really simple when you just say it like that, right? So this idea that when we think about how we want to position ourselves, how do we create an experience? How do we even transform them so that when they leave, they say, I'm going to tell every friend that I have. In fact, I've got to come back here and do this again. I'm going to come back here every month or every week, whatever it is, the frequency of the offering that you have. And this works for health centers. This works for training centers. It works for anything. Is how do we elevate that? Does anybody else have so the example of food would be, we'll use food. So a functional brand is going to be just selling commodity food. Here's a bunch of tomatoes, whatever it is. That's a functional brand. If we then move into an image brand, we're looking at now, what's my differentiation, right? These are tomatoes, but they're homegrown tomatoes with love, and we sing to them every morning. Okay, I'm getting silly. But the idea is, what's your differentiation? These are organic, or in the sense of they're no chemicals, they're in really good soil, it's in a good location. These are premium tomatoes, whether the San Marzano regions or whatever, that's a differentiation in tomatoes, right, here in Italy. That is this idea that I can now charge more. Now, again, the goal is not to charge more, but just letting you know that there's ways to actually charge more. And we talked about this. We used wheat, I think, as a previous example. The next piece is, if I want to charge even more for that, or even get a greater interaction level, how to make it experiential. And maybe that's now, rather than me dropping off even some really good tomatoes at your place, and by the way, an image brand also would be thinking about the packaging. Like, you've seen, like, Japan does this really well. They don't sell like their high-end apples, or like literally an apple with like a case around it, like, with a lock, like it's like their next level, right? And they're charging you $50 for an apple, $100 for a pear, because they're branding it. It's under gold foil and all these other things. That's an image brand, okay? So it's a differentiation. You're saying this is so amazing that, it needs to have a lock and key just to eat it. The next level up is experiential. And this is this idea that I say, okay, I'm not just going to sell you the tomato. Come out to the farm. Come out to the farm, have a tour, and then when you leave, I'll sell you the tomato, but with the price of the tour. So the tomato still costs, I'm going to put a dollar for a tomato, whatever, I don't know, okay? But now I've charged you $10 to come out to the farm, so now the tomato is now $11. You're trying to get what I'm trying to say is, think about how can I create an experience where you're like, I loved it so much. My kids came out, they really enjoyed it, right? My kids had a great time out there. They want to come back, and they have an experience. They've walked away with an experience. Now they love your brand, and they want to connect with your brand more. There's one level above that, and that's aspirational. And so an aspirational brand is an idea of, to really understand this, you'd have to understand persona matrices, and I skipped over that because this isn't a marketing class necessarily, but when we understand what's the journey of my customer. So they may say, I want this tomato because I need to feel healthier. But what do they really want? They want health. Maybe they want to overcome cancer or something, or they want to overcome some sort of health problem that they have, okay? So then the thought is that how can we actually move them to another quadrant? And when we start thinking, and I'm not going to get into it, but when we start thinking of the different phases, there's somebody that says, okay, this is the phase I'm at, but if I can move this next phase, this next kind of parts of the quadrant, if we can be the ones that help move them there. And so an example of tomato would be, not only do they come out, they see the property, but then we teach them, we have, a vegan recipe, vegan cooking classes, or, health, plant-based cooking classes. So now we not only just, gave them give them the fish, we're teaching them how to fish kind of thing. Maybe if you do these prayers every day, right? There's a whole, I'm trying to say, right? Whatever it is. Now that sounds silly, but you've heard about the gas in the car. Say, no, this is an opportunity. People should be lucky to come out here and see what God has for them. And I want to provide an experience for them that makes them want to come back. And more than that, I want to transform their life in a way. And by the way, the greatest transformation would be introducing them to Christ. But I was talking about tomatoes, but you could still think about what that real touch point is. I'll kick it back.
Well, I passed through some of the same things until I realized, the place I am, the things I can do, it's, it can be, we have to have in mind always the idea that, people are not buying tomatoes. Mm-hmm. They are buying health. They are buying, an experience, a transformation that they want to happen if they use those products. And if we keep our mind and focus always on what's the real benefit that the customer, the clients will take from there, we can really, really improve that experience in so many ways. Just recently at Bertholf, at the farm, we had, I was just talking 10 minutes in one of the churches in the closest city about gardening and the importance of agriculture. And when they heard from the Word of God how important it is in our lives that we connect with nature and with God through nature, and we spend time in nature, and when they come and they plant a tree or something into the country, they are going to have their name on it. So I had 15 kids coming. I was there with Emmy, one of the guys, and some others from Bertholf, and we dig 5 holes. We split them in groups, in 5 groups, 3 kids for every tree, and they were planting a tree on our farm there, so they can have their experience. So I taught them a land-wide method, and I explained to them why they and their parents and everybody should, use this method for planting an orchard. And I even went further and I said, how you can use this method with the vegetables, with tomatoes and other plants that they can bear this method very well. So the kids were so enthusiastic, and also in the end, some parents came to pick them, but they come at the right time, but we were late because of all the things we've done there. And the parents were so shocked to see these things are happening in the country. They never heard about this, and they were surprised to see how good the kids enjoyed being in nature, improve and give to.
You then take that and form around it, and just keep adding layers around it. Keep doing the same thing, that you're doing, and then thinking about, is there an upsell to that? And it's okay to have those upsells. So,
yeah, I think there are many great opportunities that we can take. Many times, tell me if I'm right or not, we feel guilty to charge on some things we feel we get for free. Or we feel guilty to charge because, how the people should pay us for those things. I tell you, those kids and their parents, they spend the money anyway in other, how shall I say?
Less wholesome.
Yeah, in other places where kids get fun. So why should we not take those money and let us make that fun in a healthy way for kids? Because they will go anyway and spend money on junk food. They will go anyway and spend money on, going cities and using all the crazy things. So how we can change that perspective and not feeling guilty about, because many times we feel that in the country. We feel we should charge as less as possible and give almost for free because.
I mean, you know my stance on this. I adhere to the Robin Hood model, so I'm happy to steal from the rich to give to the poor. I think thinking about those models would be, I do think that we, like if there's a barrier to entry to evangelism, that barrier needs to be removed. And so if we find out that there's 10 kids that can't come out and plant a tree and get closer to God because of a fee, you can create we now have 10 scholarships we're willing to give away because of a nice benefactor who happens to be us, but we aren't going to tell you that, right? So I think there are ways to say, there are scholarships available, things like this. My only caution is we don't get so caught up in the greed side that we lose fact of we're here for a ministry side. But conversely, if we're doing ministry and it's not sustainable, we can't do ministry. So we have to be smart on how we do things. And I think having a balance or having an understanding of what can we do for free, and are there other products? And maybe
that can be addressed. We have a bit of time for if. I think we can continue with some other ideas, but would like us that we answer some questions maybe you have. Yeah, to that. That's one side people do. We can do that very easily, but we don't really give the best value. But the second piece is if I start with the course and I say, like you were saying, I have the product, so I'm going and begging to people to buy my course. That's also a problem. So what's the solution?
Well, you said it, right? It's the thought is, why don't you start with the audience first? If you're thinking about what offering you want to provide, a lot of times we create an offering and then we scramble to figure out who's going to buy it, right? And so that's that idea of starting with something you're passionate about, finding if there's demand for it, and then going and talking to something you're passionate about, finding if there's demand for it, and then going and talking to them. Hey, I was thinking about, you mentioned course. I'm thinking about creating this course on how to leave the city. Would you be interested in something like that? Yes? Okay, what would you be willing to pay for it? What are some of the modules that you'd be interested in that? What skill level you want? Is this a market gardener? Et cetera. Ask the questions and build something from that. Now I have a list of maybe 10 people who, when I go to sell say, okay, I'm ready to launch this course, I've got 10 built-in customers. Or even with a bad, lower conversion rate, I've got 4 initial customers. From there, it's about, if you create good product, and again, this is not what I used to teach 10 years ago in Silicon Valley, but if you create a good product, then people are going to want to then tell their friends. And think about referrals, right? Think about, hey, I saw you're using the course. How'd you like it? Is there any improvements, et cetera? Then say, do you have maybe 3 friends that you think would also get value from this? And start smaller like that. That's how I've had my most successful businesses have not been starting with Facebook ads, has been starting with relationships and building off of a need. And as you grow that, then you can then move into other segments. There was something on that I was trying to think of. I wanted to, I had another train of thought. I'll kick it back.
Yeah, so basically the idea and the bottom line answer to this question is, start with the audience, start with people. Let us not start with our products, but see the need and create value for people on what they need. Because otherwise we will work a lot to have a good product, but nobody's interested about. Yeah.
And I think also sales, one of the ideas also is thinking about what's the journey look like. And a lot of times we may be even successful in one product, and then we think, okay, I'm going to go start another product. And it would make more sense to think about what's the next step in the journey with that customer, because I already have a relationship there. So if you already have another business or a relationship and a network somewhere else, think about how can I then provide the next level for that, versus starting a new product or whatever it is. Think about where you're at right now and what's within arm's length.
I think we have a bit of time for one more question, at least.
I'll throw one more piece out there if I could of how to attract customers. And that's a lot of times by building authority. People want to help other people, but they don't know how often. And so this is maybe more of a networking tip on how to get sales, is just be clear with what your ask is and let people know what it is that you offer. So you're offering a course on how to, he hasn't yet, but he needs to, offer a course on how to get out of the country, how to get out of the city into the country. So then when he's introducing himself, he should be saying, hi, right? I'm Christy. I have a burden on my heart about, the need to move out of the country, move out of the city into the country. And the problem is that, it's really hard to do. And so I've created a 3-step formula for how to get out of the city. I'm offering now as a course. It's really interesting to me. If you're interested more, I'd love to tell you more about it, whatever. Like the idea is, having some sort of, ABCs always be selling, whatever it is. People know what it is that you're offering, not in an annoying way. But I think passion sells. And I think the other piece on that is just start with authority. Like the soil guy. So if I were to say, okay, we need to, you're the guy I want to call. Hey, what are your rates for consulting? I don't know that actually. In fact, do we just use this right now? Okay, but if it's okay to put you on the spot a little bit. If I already heard you're the guy I'm going to call. So have some testimonials. We should be collecting testimonials from people that we've done really good work for. And because that sells. Letting them know I do have space for for 2 customers next spring, or whatever it is, and I'd be really, I'm willing to come out to the property for, but it's, it's not cheap, but I'm also willing to do things over email, even for free even. So that's kind of like, you can kind of lay that out for them. I don't know, maybe it was too much, but that's a thought for me, just switching what sales is to authority building.
Is there any other question? I guess not. So I think we can end here. But you can approach Rob and me or us anytime. Our wish is, in general, to help people move to the country and not having fear that there is nothing they can do out there in order to sustain themselves, and also ways and methods that they can be out there and minister to the people and have the resources to do it. So let's finish with a word of prayer. Father in heaven, we want to thank you again for this opportunity to share from everything you gave to us. Thank you for the opportunity to connect together, and also the many ways and ideas that you gave us when we are out there into the country, to know how to minister to the people as Enoch done. And we all pray that you're going to continue to guide and be with us with your Holy Spirit, also in our preparation for Sabbath, and give us a good fellowship together. In Jesus' name I prayed. Amen.